You're listening to Talking Taiwan with your host, Felicia Lin.
On this episode of Talking Taiwan, you'll find out about a sewing circle that has taken on making masks. First, for frontline medical and essential workers, and now for vulnerable marginalized communities who have no financial means to purchase masks. My guests are Valerie Soe, an Asian American Studies professor and filmmaker, and Kristina Wong, a performance artist, comedian, writer, and elected representative. Valerie has been on Talking Taiwan previously to talk about her documentary film Love Boat Taiwan, and she recently made a micro-documentary about how she's been sewing masks with a group called the Auntie Sewing Squad.
I'm not quite sure how it happened, but somehow I got involved with a sewing circle that Kristina Wong organized on Facebook sometime around mid-March 2020. The COVID-19 crisis had just started to take over our lives in the U.S., and due to the criminal negligence of the Trump administration, hospital workers had little or no personal protective equipment available. So Kristina started sewing masks for those frontliners, and I joined in. Pretty soon after that, due to the huge leap in demand, there was a run on elastic for masks, and we started looking for alternatives. Some people were making their own ties out of strips of fabric or using the plundered elastic from fitted bed sheets, but my friend Grace Yu suggested using lanyards cut from conference badges, which suited me a bit better since it didn't require any extra sewing or handwork.
Kristina Wong, who is the force behind the Auntie Sewing Squad, recently streamed over Zoom and YouTube her latest work born out of the current COVID-19 lockdown, Kristina Wong, Sweatshop Overlord.
Welcome to America, where your medical professional might be wearing an upcycled mask made from Center for Asian American Media Film Festival lanyards or your old Belle and Sebastian concert shirts.
What or who is the Auntie Sewing Squad? It is a group of people of all genders who have turned their living rooms into sweatshops to make masks to stop the spread of COVID-19. They share resources on patterns, fabric, and elastic. Many of them are in Los Angeles, but they are everywhere. Now, let's turn to my conversation with Kristina and Valerie. Welcome back to the podcast, Valerie, and welcome, Kristina.
Thank you.
Hi, happy apocalypse.
So, Kristina, could you briefly introduce yourself and what you do as a performance artist and how COVID-19 has personally affected you?
Well, my intro of late has been Kristina Wong was a performance artist, a comedian, and an elected rep in Koreatown, but now she runs the Auntie Sewing Squad, which is a group of volunteers who are sewing personal protective equipment on our home sewing machines because of the federal government's failure to provide and prepare for this crisis. And so I went from touring shows across the country to now pricing out elastic and 100% cotton fabric. And now we're in like week 6 of what was supposed to be a stopgap and so, of sewing masks on our home sewing machines. Our group, not necessarily by design or intention, is a lot of Asian American women. And we have become quite a caring and supportive community, both for the masks that we're making for other communities, but also for each other in this time. And I think that's what makes our community remarkable. So right now I'm working on a new show, which I had no intention. If you told me 2 weeks ago, hey, we're gonna go into lockdown, I had no idea. I went touring a show about Kristina Wong for public office, which was about me running for public office in Koreatown and winning. The idea was that show was supposed to tour alongside all the election shenanigans that we're supposed to be witnessing right now.
Mm-hmm.
That, of course, isn't happening. And now my new show is called Kristina Wong, Sweatshop Overlord. And it's being performed on Zoom. And it's sort of like a real-life diary enacted in my bedroom of what the last few weeks have been like, to go from basically making a few masks to like trying to figure out how to send a caravan of fabric to the Navajo Nation and get things across the border to migrants stuck at the border. So can talk more about that, but yeah.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
who I am, who I was, I have no idea, but this is what I know I'm doing right now. I'm running a sweatshop, and Valerie award-winning filmmaker who's in it.
Yes, and I'm just a peon.
Let's pause here to share a clip with our listeners from your show, Kristina Wong, Sweatshop Overlord.
I actually didn't wear a mask in February because I was trying to protect myself. Not from the virus, but from being a target of harassment and assault. You know, see, it doesn't matter if I'm third generation Chinese American. It doesn't matter that this virus was caused by a bat and doesn't have a nationality. This is a mask that I cannot take off. It already tells people that maybe I'm an immigrant, that maybe I don't speak English, that maybe I'm just visiting from this monolith that is Asia, that maybe I'm the one who just got off the airplane and brought the virus here as my deep conspiracy to bring this virus here.
So tell me about this clip. Is it true that in the beginning you didn't even want to wear a mask?
I had no idea we'd end up in this situation. If I knew this was going to happen, I would have started sewing. In February, I would have invested in sergers. I'm just going to put that out there, and I would have stockpiled fabric. But anyway, but before all that, I mean, I had never even worn a face mask before in February, and I live in Koreatown, and my co-working space is in Chinatown. So I travel between the two alternate, you know, otherly Asian neighborhoods in the so I see a lot of Asian people, and they were wearing masks, and I would find myself gawking and like oh my God, are you sick? You know, and then like having to check myself, and that for that reason I didn't want to wear a mask myself, because I didn't want to be stared at. I didn't want to make myself a further target of verbal or physical assaults, and in this weird way, it was like I chose not to wear a mask as a form of protection.
Yeah, and Valerie, how did you get involved in all this?
You know, I can't really remember. That's the weird thing. I think Kristina and I were just kind of serendipitously both thinking about making cotton masks for ourselves, maybe some of our friends. And then I think I remember at one point we both did like a Facebook Live of us sewing masks. And then I think maybe a few days later, Kristina created this Facebook group, the Auntie Sewing Squad, that, you know, seemed modest.
Now we have 600 members.
600 now?
Yeah, there's more than 600 now. I just looked. There's 610 people.
Wow.
I think there was 500 last week.
It's kind of like active, but it's like such a process, because we've got to onboard them, we've got to introduce them to the ecosystem, and the bigger, you know, it's great to have more help, but the bigger it gets, it's more to manage, and it's more chance, because we have a very giving system of like, we have auntie care, so we have like food and baked goods that sort of
cake.
Well, it sort of happened organically, because basically I was getting so angry that I was sitting around sewing, and it was much more exhaustive in the first few weeks, because everyone needed a mask, and I must have been like one of 10 people offering or something, because everyone was hitting me up, and I was just getting slammed with requests from hospitals, and I was like, wait, you want me to make you fucking medical equipment on my Hello Kitty sewing machine?
Wow.
And it was just so hard to find the stuff to make it. Like people were sending money, but it's like I had nothing to spend the money on, and we actually are still in that situation. Like
really?
Our friends in the Navajo Nation want us to send them sergers, because they can sew too. You know, they just don't. These machines would speed up that process, because they of course have closer access to the people to give it to, and a better sense of exactly what's needed, whether that's an isolation gown or hospital booties. And Rebecca Solnit, another friend, Croft Vaughn, offered to pay for 3 of these sergers, and we cannot find these machines in stock.
Wow, really?
Even at Joann's, the worst the worst craft store in the world. BTW. I hate Joann's. That's.
I mean, luckily, Kristina and a lot of the other Los Angeles folks live near the garment district in LA, so they've been able to go pillage a bunch of the garment supply stores to get elastic and the fabric we get donated, which is mostly donated, which is great.
Oh, that's amazing.
But some people, I mean, there's one person who still only uses bed sheets and tears them up with her hands because she has arthritis.
Oh.
And then Helen Lee. It's like, you know, we say, can we give you scissors? Helen's like, no. I'm tearing it up with my bare hands, bitch.
Wow, that's serious
the
business.
Fabric, the fabric, and I feel like this is important to know, because there's so many levels of invisibility to us doing this work. But I don't think people, if you are like a super Amazon Prime person and you're just used to pressing a button and getting it, I think I want to make clear to people how much labor this is. That we don't do this professionally. Even the people who do this professionally do it under really difficult conditions. And the fabric, the elastic, like the work it takes to source that, the work it takes for me to send a volunteer down to the garment district is dangerous because they're exposing themselves to the virus. And so we, at one point, one of our volunteers, Leilani, she used to dance in a hula halau 20 years ago. She cut up her old hula costumes to make masks for the Navajo Nation. And then we've had like these incredible photo stories. People put, like, this is my mother passed away and left me this fabric.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah. This is elastic from my yoga tops.
Wow.
This is elastic from a fitted bed sheet.
Yeah, so it's like it's not systematic at all. You know, it's very DIY and it's very ad hoc and it's very grassroots. And I mean, and I think that that's kind of cool in a lot of ways, because then a lot of people feel like they're really invested, as opposed to just like, you know, like maybe Kristina saying, "Look, here's some fabric, maybe," you know. So people say, "Oh, I'll go dig up some fabric. I'll ask my friends. I'll find out where people need masks, and then I'll be in charge of like that particular order of masks, that request." So we're really trying to like spread, you know, delegate the responsibility and give people that ownership. So it's not like they just feel like they're workers, you know, because they're really not. That's the whole point.
Right. We're a little bit more decentralized than some of the other mask groups where they just have sewers and just have runners and they have one hospital they're shipping to. And so aunties are, but it does make things confusing for new folks.
Yeah, for better or worse, right?
For better or worse, but like there are just some things that people are very passionate about, and they'll put the ask out and they'll ask aunties to help pitch in for it. So our first gigantic ask was a few weeks ago. It was 800 masks that we needed from the Navajo Nation. And that was a big ask. And
800.
It took 23 aunties pitching in to meet that goal. And we met it, you know,
awesome.
and so there's a very specific way we work. And what we've found too, like the hospitals are something that haven't been as urgent. And I mean, I'm sure the urgency is still there, but now this particular group seems to be moving more towards border communities, and that's like migrants who are seeking asylum, people getting out of ICE detention,
women getting released from incarceration,
women coming out of detention and incarceration,
like nursing home
farmers,
farm workers,
day laborers. Like these are communities that the federal government doesn't even care about before all this, and has completely left behind now. And then First Nations. So I've learned more about what it takes to get stuff to the Navajo Nation than I ever imagined. It's kind of horrifying in that.
Right, that you've had to learn all this and now you know the situation.
Because the government's not stepping in where they should be.
Right.
You know, it's not. It shouldn't be our job to fill this gap.
Right.
For the federal government's incompetency. Unfortunately, it has become our avocation.
Valerie, what are your thoughts on mask wearing?
I mean, when I've spent a lot of time in Asia, and it really was really like confusing to me. It's like, why is this like this like phobia about wearing a face mask? Because, you know, like in Japan, it's like, you know, you get to wake up in the morning, you just have like a bad face day, you put on a mask, or you don't want to shave, or you don't put on lipstick, you know. And then they also are super like trendy and fashionable among like musicians and artists. So like you see like a rapper from Korea, they're going to be wearing like a mask around their neck because it's like, it's hard, it's gangster. So it's like, what is going on? So I don't understand why people in the U.S. are so freaked out about this mask thing. Yeah. It's like, why? What? And now it's become like a big ass issue because, you know, these people who are a little less sensitive to other people's needs and are making it like a big deal, like their rights are being infringed. You know, it's like, well, my right is I don't want to die. I'm sorry. So I'm being a little unreasonable, you know?
Yeah.
Well, There was a lot of conflicting information about masks.
Yes.
Well, that's true.
About whether or not they were effective or not. So,
Yeah, that's right.
It was like, do I want to both be a target, wear this useless mask? But it took the hospitals asking people to make masks for me to go, well, no, it must be useful. But we as mask makers, I will say, probably get forwarded the same 5 links about masks. And one is the stupid Joanne's link about the free mask, the quote unquote free mask kits. Fuck that shit. That shit is bullshit. It's not a real mask kit. It's just a bunch of clearance scraps and rubber bands.
Wow.
The other one is this like, look, science is on your side. It's an article about how cloth masks aren't effective.
Oh.
And then there's the counter to that, which is about how some like wearing masks in Asia actually brought down infection rate.
Right.
And then I can't remember what the other 2 mask links are, but yeah, they're like, those are the links that we're constantly getting. And it was so fucking stressful the first week of this, because I'm making masks
to get bombarded by all this. Yeah.
Article. Sorry to show you this, but science isn't on your side. And I'm just like,
the U.S. government was saying that. They were saying masks are effective. So, I mean, that's just another example of how the federal government completely like fucked this up, you know?
Yeah.
And then all of a
and
sudden,
they're not stepping up. Yeah.
Yeah. Oops, sorry. Am I cursing on
No,
your
this is a podcast. This is not, we don't have any censorship here.
swearing.
Anyway, so yeah, it's an example of how the federal government completely didn't know what they were doing and really had so many mixed messages, which, is emblematic of the response in this country. So when I look at a country like Taiwan or South Korea, I was like, oh, wow, things went really well there because they have leadership and intelligence and science as opposed to stupidity and superstition and greed.
Yeah, well, but there's also like, I think some cultural differences too, like with, how people value their like freedom of choice and the freedom to move about, and, the cultural, like how accustomed people are to the idea of wearing masks. There's so many like different issues too.
Well, I mean, I think for me, the biggest issue, the reason why Asian countries wear masks is because SARS killed a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
They know about what happens with infectious diseases, so they're not messing around. I mean, Hong Kong people know. That's why 99% of the people put on masks.
And the air pollution there, because there's in Taiwan, there's a lot of scooters and people are accustomed to protecting themselves from the air pollution.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, what's also crazy is, what came up, Valerie actually brought it up, and Valerie won't say who, but made it into my show. But like, I guess someone had an issue with the casual use of the word sweatshop that was thrown around. I call it a sweatshop because I'm exhausted. At least the way I'm experiencing the workload from this point of view is like the first few weeks, it was like 80 hours a week, could barely sleep, constantly running in and out of my house with fistfuls of elastic,
right?
Like, exhausted, hungry, and none of this is necessary. Like, I should not be looking at my at my clothes, wondering what I should sacrifice so the nurse doesn't die.
Oh my,
yeah. So anyway, someone had an issue with that, and this discussion came up, and some folks were not into that term because they felt like it diminishes the real experiences of sweatshop workers, both in America and overseas. And that unlike them, we have the choice to pee. We have the privilege of this time to do this. But for me, I feel like I use this term because I don't want to romanticize this as volunteer work. Like, I don't like, well, we just do this. Like, this situation is so crazy that we've been put on, and it's criminal neglect on the part of the federal government. And this level of like, if we are this prosperous nation, why are we doing this? Why don't we have access to these basic things? Why 5 weeks later are the factories not so like, why are they all back ordered? You know what I'm saying? Like,
it actually is a matter of life and death. I mean, it is really serious, the things that that we're encountering. And even though it seems like a really small thing to just make a face mask, right? It's
not a small thing, not at all, because you're serving communities who don't have access to that and who cannot afford that, and what's going to happen to them.
And you're in New York City, and how the people who are most impacted there are like transit workers, right? People of
Yes.
color,
Yeah.
frontliners in the hospitals. It's not rich people on Park Avenue who need masks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this group just like started with the Auntie Sewing Squad started with about a dozen people, and now you have over 600 people. Like, do you remember when this group really started to explode? Like, when did you hit like the first 100? Like, how long did that take? Was it
The
like days or
group,
weeks?
we looked it up. The group started on March 24th. I made my first mask on March 20th. Realized a few days later I need a little bit of help, and if I join another mask group I'm going to end up working. Was like, well, let me just do this, and I want to say by the end of the week we had our first 100, and then like it was like 100 every few days.
Wow! Oh my goodness!
I was able to speak very casually to everybody,
Right.
and we had a very casual rapport, and then we had to just kind of instill more and more protocol because people were just dumping like, oh, I saw this on the internet, these people need masks, and like it's like not useful because someone needs to do the legwork to get it to them. And seeing 100 bullshit calls for masks, and I'm saying bullshit because some of them have outdated information or don't have details. And sometimes these memes go around the internet, and it's as it turns out, this hospital can't take masks, and we didn't figure that out till after they made this meme. But this meme is still going around, and like in the case of Navajo Nation, if they're federal funded, they can't take cloth masks, and they just throw them in the trash. So anyway, so we had to put in a protocol because people who, for the most part, think they're being useful we're just creating more work and confusion, especially because like with the Navajo Nation there's like so many different organizers collecting stuff,
right?
So we needed like one person to just organize the Navajo requests and the address it,
right?
Because it could be easy to find someone, like for someone else to stumble on another address and then send it to the wrong place.
I have to say, one thing that's kind of been fun about the group is that there are people who kind of have found their niche. It's like there's a lot of people who don't sew, they just cut.
Right.
Fabric, and then there's people who only there's a few people who only bake bread.
So they're part of your care squad.
Yeah, we have a care squad.
And then there's people who are only really good at making spreadsheets and organizing stuff, and they are totally on top of it, like these super aunties.
Yeah.
So it's it's like you can kind of like what you want to do and fit in. We have Rebecca Solnit is now part of our group, and she is the writing auntie, and she writes articles about us sometimes, and she gives us her books. That's her job,
She also wanted a serger for the Navajo Nation.
She did buy a couple sergers.
Find one for sale.
But she's also a famous writing auntie, so she has a little bit of capital. So
right. Where has she written about you in certain publications then? And should share a link with me?
Article coming. This article in the Guardian, and she actually reached out to me this morning and was like, so how can I help, because I'm a slow sewer and I do have some influence. And I was like, yeah, I know you do. And I said, a little bit. I really feel like what we need is someone to archive this work, because if civilization survives another 100 years, and we look back on this time during the plague of 2020, I want it to be remembered that women of color stepped up and did this work, that it wasn't like this romantic, like white crafter lady, like that looked like the enemy. Very paradoxically, we're doing the work to support all these communities that have gotten left behind, and that our own community, it's not just a bunch of worker bees. Like the joke is I'm the overlord and that I will cut off your fingers. That's not a joke, actually. I will cut off fingers if you don't use your last advice from you, because it was so hard to find. But but that we do like support each other. We do look out for each other's care. And who's the unarmed black man who was shot yesterday? I don't.
It wasn't shot yesterday, but the video came out.
The video came out, yeah. So one of the aunties who doesn't sew really wanted us, as a gesture of love, to make some masks for the NAACP.
In his hometown.
And so I think we are experiencing grief in specific ways, and this has been one kind of healing way to sort of give and love when we can't see each other and we can't show support in any other way. And I think that is very significant. Like I'm kind of stunned. I'm like, am I in a cult? am I running a clock? There's so much love. There's so much love and so much fervor. But, this is a time where people are really looking for purpose and feel helpless. And this sewing is just like one beautiful small gesture of love and care that we know how to do.
Yeah, and like
and
you
if we
said,
know how to do it, we know how to bake for the people who are.
Right. Well, yeah, I know, it's amazing. And like you said, it's even beyond just the sewing, because people are using their own personal garments and to make these masks and things
We're
like
trying to move
that.
away from that.
Yeah, sure. Are most of the aunties located in California, or do you have any squads like in other parts of the country?
We, so I think what also makes us different than other groups is because we are dispersed everywhere. We're mostly in Los Angeles. So I'm a main, I think most of the homemade masks have now, at some point, some element of them have come through my living room. But we have a big hub in the Bay Area.
I'm an elastic hub. I should have elastic.
Valerie distributes elastic.
Yes.
And then we also have aunties in Arizona.
Wow.
Some
I
in
think
Florida.
Maine,
yeah, we have so we're organized a little bit differently than these groups that work locally, and they have like a coordinator just picks up in that neighborhood and drops it off locally. Like it might not be totally efficient, but we seem to make it work.
I feel like postage is probably like one of the biggest cash outlays.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff that's needed. So yeah.
Yeah, because like if an auntie lives off in a small town, there's no one to go pick it up. So that auntie just mails off the masks and asks for a reimbursement. So that's where it can add up a little bit. Mm-hmm. But that's where a lot of the donation money goes to, is to help reimburse for postage.
Right.
Since we're not paying for our labor.
So less organized than it sounds like, though. I just want to say that right now. I mean, it's not that it doesn't work, but it is really kind of like just, very like organic, if you want to use that word.
And now we have these insane spreadsheets with drop-down menus. Like you don't see them, Valerie, but I see them.
Wow.
How did this happen? I was literally like half laying in bed, and I was like, what do I call this? Auntie Sewing Squad. Like not realizing the acronym was going to be ASS. Like I was literally like, this needs to pull a few people together.
We own it.
To talk to and maybe help me sew these things. Like, and now it's become like we're doing gigs.
I literally have no memory.
Well, let me tell you, when I talked to Grace, she actually said that you guys are very well organized. So I'll make sure I put her sound clip in here that says this group is really super organized.
Maybe we are organized, but it's not like rigidly organized. Maybe
sure.
I would say.
Yeah.
I mean.
Right.
It's not like there's like hard and fast rules about every single thing that happens. So
you have guidelines, and it sounds like you make people proactive and autonomous for themselves, and then people who are specialized with certain skills, they can focus on what they can bring to the table, and that's the best way they can serve the group.
Yeah, and people just come up and say, "How can I help?" And they just show like literally post that, and I go, "Well, what do you feel like you're good at? You want to do?" Like you want to do a spreadsheet? You want to run around in the car? Or like what do you want to do?
A big page for us.
Yeah.
You want to just run the electronic rotary cutter and just cut up things. That's pretty fun.
Right. Yeah, so that brings us to my question. How can people support the Auntie Sewing Squad in general if they want to donate? And you did mention that a lot of the donations go toward the postage, but if people want to give donations, where do they give it? And what is it going to be used toward?
Okay, so the donations can be sent towards my Venmo, which I know sounds super shady, but I haven't had an issue. People have sent tens of thousands of dollars to me in the last few weeks, and I haven't pocketed any of it. It's Give Kristina Wong Money. And people were like, why don't we open a checking account? I'm like, because we're not supposed to be around this long. We're not, we're supposed to be a stopgap. We just happen to be going into month 2. But anyway, so that all that money would help cover our costs related to postage, buying materials, and I think that's it. And maybe some, like if we do this van trip to the Navajo Nation, like gas reimbursement and stuff like that. And we have used that money to support other mask groups, because there are other mask groups who like they have the labor on standby, but no materials. So I've just given, because we've been very fortunate. I think we have a very good story that people are compelled by, and they've been very generous. So I've given these other mask groups enough so they can get started. And then it became very clear to us that this work is very hard on our bodies. It's exhausting. And it's also super lonely. We are subject to the same stress and loneliness as people.
Yeah, because it's not like you're doing this all together. You're doing this individually in your homes for long hours.
And basically, the first couple weeks of this, I wasn't eating, not because I was like on a hunger strike, but because literally the phone was ringing so much, and people were constantly outside needing things that I couldn't stop. And someone stepped in and was like, "I'm going to have food sent to you." And I was like, "Thank you." And it was like the greatest treat. And it made me feel so much less bitter about it. And then so many people began to offer food that I began to direct those deliveries to the other sewers. Then I asked Gail Issa to be our care coordinator to basically just coordinate offerings and deliveries of this care. And I think it's probably the best part of our group that is very unique to us as a mask. And it was sort of happening too, like people were showing up for stuff and they'd give me a bottle of wine or some cookies they made. And it was just like, it was really sweet. And so this is just one way that we've been able to make sure everyone gets a little bit of care. And we found that like some women are having, and I say women because it is mostly the women who have not been asking for support. And so we now can nominate for them to get some care and support. And some of them love it. Some of them are not afraid to ask for it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Valerie is
I like
every sweet's offered.
I really would like some savories now. I'm just. I never actually used to eat that many baked goods, but you know.
Like, when you were like, I only made 125 masks. I'm like 125 divided by a jar of jam I've seen.
No. There's like marmalade, jam, cookies, lemon.
I'm like, Valerie is the hustler that I keep complaining.
Oh, so you're naming off all the treats that you've been given.
Yeah. No, Valerie's been hustling all the treats. Valerie finally like revealed the numbers of how many masks she actually made. And I was like, wait a second.
No,
something doesn't add up.
Slacker collecting food.
You're really
Okay, yeah. So my next question, like, it kind of brings me to the question, which I know the answer to, but I'm sure the logical question of a lot of our listeners is, do you plan to turn what you're doing into a nonprofit organization?
No.
And please tell us why not.
No, that's the answer.
We need to be going out of business soon.
Yeah, the goal is to become obsolete.
The government needs to figure
right.
This is not a sustainable model. It's a model that can only exist at this point in time where people aren't at work. I had a brief flash of like, well, when this course is over, what else could we sew? And I went, nothing. We're not doing this. We're not doing this again. We're going to have a retirement party when this is over, and we're going to keep our friendships, and that's it. We're not forming a fucking nonprofit. I'm not applying for funding. Like, no.
But, don't we want like corporate sponsorship from Singer though? And Joanne?
Another group has it, and it is sewing machines. But
you know, if you want to brand your startup or your like venture capitalist firm with us, we'll take maybe.
Yes. Oh yeah. We'll take your money. But yeah, I don't want to, like, I'm in quarantine. I'm not going to go to the trouble of forming a board and filing paperwork. And like, we were really only supposed to be 2 to 3 weeks old. And now I keep checking in with other mask groups, and some of them are like, we're planning to sew to December. We may go 6 months. We're just going to go to May 15th. And I'm just like, I like the May 15th answer. I don't want to do this till December. Okay,
so your plans are only to do this till May 15th?
That's another group. Yeah. I don't know, because I've asked the group. I say, how long do you? Because I'll try to support where I can. I know I can't work at the pace I've been working.
Yeah, no, it's not sustainable
forever.
It's important to delegate. We're trying to delegate more.
Yes.
Yeah. And also kind of keep it at a pace, because people are returning to their jobs even from home, and so there's got to be a way, like a rhythm in place, so that like, oh, I just got bored and or unwound when made 20 masks, where do they go? So we just have a system in place for that. But like,
I do feel like people, the members get a lot out of it. So it's not like I feel like that they're being forced to do it at all. I mean, I feel like they really want to do it because it makes their life like more meaningful. It gives them something to do. They feel like they're contributing to making things better. So it's like, it's a service that if they're willing to keep doing it, and they're willing to help out with that infrastructure,
Right. And hopefully people are just managing themselves and being mindful of like what time they have to do that, if they have to go back to work or have other obligations. Yeah.
And for the most part, there's been a few stragglers. I'll just use that diplomatic term, but like for the most part, everyone's been very motivated. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have just a few people. I'm like, what happened to the fabric I gave you? Why aren't you returning my texts? Are you running off with my stuff? But that's only happened a few times. But in any other setting in the world, like this, the whole like Kristina offering reimbursements in fabric and all this kind of stuff could really be abused. And I feel like people have really stepped up to their best selves.
Yeah, for sure.
I wish I didn't say on this that I offer free reimbursements for postage, because now all the postage thieves that listen to your podcast will join our group and produce fake postal receipts.
Oh, I hope not. Great. So is there anything else that I haven't covered that you'd like to share about the Auntie Sewing Squad? Any like stories or anything you want the listeners to know?
I was thinking of Grace Yu, who is a Valerie's friend who teaches at State, who is like one of my like favorites. Like just she didn't even know to sew before all this.
Wow.
And she just committed to like sewing for different groups.
She borrowed someone's sewing machine to do this?
Yeah, and then we taught her how to sew on Zoom, like how to thread her machine, and it was really hard.
And she was really like, she thought the machine was broken, but it was just the bobbin. I was so proud of myself. Right. I fixed the machine via Facebook comments.
Wow.
Yeah.
She had like the bobbin winder pushed to the right.
Oh my goodness.
But like the photos, she sent this photo of the grocery outlet worker wearing her mask, and they're in the aisle, and it was like the cutest thing I'd ever seen. And I sent a picture of that to the fabric donor friend who sent it, and that was moving to that fabric donor friend. So I feel like there's definitely, it's like, okay, we don't have art galleries and stuff right now, and runways and film fests, but we're seeing our work in a very different way, like on the faces of people all over the country.
Right. Yeah.
We're helping to survive.
Yeah.
I feel like it's really fun for me, when I see people wearing the masks. Like I gave a whole bunch of masks to Rainbow Grocery here in San Francisco, and I hadn't been there since I gave it to them. And I'm wondering what it's going to be like if I go over there and like see everybody wearing my mask. Like,
it throws me off when people come pick up stuff and they're wearing a mask I made. I go, oh, that looks really messy.
Yeah.
Because I don't match thread. I'm like a really messy sewer. But some of the sewers are really into it. Like, who has white thread and black elastic? I'm like, are you fucking trying to match shit right now? They're talking about dyeing. I can't even believe how snobby some of our aunties are with color. It's like, come on.
We have standards.
I have like no standards, and then I see my mess with people. I'm like, yeah, that is a fucking mess that I sewed on your face.
But fun. That's really fun though, to see people wearing them.
Yeah, for sure. And Valerie, you made a micro documentary for ADOC about being in the sewing circle, the Auntie Sewing Squad. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of explained it a little bit in the film, but when we started out making these masks, like mid-March, all of a sudden there was this huge run on elastic, right? We could not find elastic anywhere. And so we started to try to think of what we can do. So people were like ripping the elastic out of bed sheets and using that for like ear loops.
Yeah.
I think Kristina went and found a bunch of hair elastics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like headbands.
Yeah, from the dollar store. I thought it was the biggest find. I found headbands. And
we were so excited. Have we used
You're like,
them?
oh my God, okay, this is how we're going to break this.
But did people use them?
This other one, I still have the eldbands because I came across the last.
So we haven't really, So, but anyway, so Grace Yu, the same person that we all taught how to sew on Zoom, said, oh, why don't we could use like the lanyards from these conferences that, all these academics and filmmakers and artists go to, that we have stacked up in our houses. I mean, I probably had like 50 or 60
Wow.
just myself.
Yeah, like what do you do with those when you're done, right?
What do you do with them? And then so they were kind of about the right length and about the right width. And so, yeah, then I started putting them in the masks, and then people liked them because they recognize their favorite film festival and so forth. And some of them are really pretty. The problem is that some of them have like big old corporate branding logos on them. So it'll say like Sundance Film Festival, Wells Fargo. And so when I made these masks, for instance, like for Rainbow, which is like a socialist workers cooperative grocery store in San Francisco, I had to sort through and make sure there were none of them that said Wells Fargo on them or Chase, like or upload.com or anything. So that took a while. That was hard to do because every single one of them had some kind of corporate thing on it. It made me realize there's a lot of corporate branding on these logos, on these lanyards. So but
that sort of points to just how there is no supply chain, right? Like even Joann's, most terrible craft store in the entire world, who you would think would have all the shit, they weren't prepared for this either. They're out of sergers. They were out of elastic the first week.
Yeah.
I
went. There was none.
Yeah, it's bananas. It is bananas to try to make this work with what we have. And I had like posted about Valerie's discovery about the lanyards, and I was like, "Welcome to America, where your medical professional is wearing an upcycled face mask," and people were just horrified, right? I mean, I would add to that another story which I told on the show, but when I finally found my friend Skip, who lives in the garment district, when I finally found this one place that was open, we bought them out of elastic, right? Because I'm the Don Corleone of elastic, and I just, I'll just dump hundreds of dollars at once on boxes of soft elastic.
Wow.
And so this hospital in LA, which doesn't want its name said aloud for PR reasons, it's so weird how close to this problem I'm getting.
Wow.
The federal government dropped off N95s that were all broken. All the elastic was brittle. So the masks were staying on their face. They were trying to tie the masks on their face with tourniquet rubbers. And it wasn't like the only way they could ask was a doctor had to ask someone who had to ask someone who asked Candace, who is a coordinator in San Gabriel for another mask group, who asked me, "Do you have 1/4 inch flat elastic?" And I'm like, "I just bought out a place today." And so basically, like, the difference between life or death for these doctors, like on the floor of my living room. And when Candace came to get the elastic, I was like, "Do they need us to fix it?" Because we're handy. We and
Sure.
like they will not let the masks leave the hospital because masks are getting stolen, even broken ones, I guess, and being resold. So 6,000 masks disappeared from another hospital.
Oh my goodness!
And now they're in a locked room. Broken masks with an armed guard. Now my elastic is probably in this room with the armed guard.
Wow.
And I'm just like, what? Where are we that this is happening?
Yeah.
That I'm like I should not be this close to this issue. I should just be watching Netflix, right? And doing my part by doing nothing. But instead I'm like, how is this happening that I'm like handing the soldiers ammo?
That's incredible.
Why are we ordinary citizens filling this really important critical need?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. That's incredible. Yeah, that really puts things in perspective.
But if I made it clear, fuck no, we are not turning into a nonprofit. If we're at that point, then we really have screwed up.
Although I have to say, I'm kind of addicted to sewing these little masks now. It's like, oh my God, I was looking at some of my clothes today and thinking, hey, I could make that. It's like, no.
What happened at the end of the pandemic? A bunch of really talented filmmakers and artists decided that they wanted to sew.
We're going back to the land because of you.
Valerie said something funny. It was like, when you said frontiersmanship is hard or something. You said really funny at the beginning of all this.
Oh my God.
You said a few things. One was like, this is our ancestral destiny, was something Valerie said. And
because we're all government workers' children.
It's not word pioneership, or what was the phrase you said is hard, because that's what it fucking felt like it was the Oregon Trail, and like we were like trying to figure out how to come up with stuff.
I'd have to scan my Facebook comments for that.
It is though, but it is important work that you guys are doing it, but you've created it from the ground up, and like you are pioneering this, but it's not supposed to be your job to do this.
No, it's not. And actually for me, it's been like partially from my own sanity. Otherwise I'd just be like obsessively going on social media and being furious and upset and anxious about everything. So now instead of doing that, I just I do actually go on social media while I'm sewing. So, but at least I feel like I have a purpose now that is positive as opposed to just being full of rage.
Yeah, it's really important to have things to channel your energy at this time. Valerie, could you talk a little bit about the micro-documentary that you made about the Auntie Sewing Squad for ADOC? After all, that is how I found out about this whole thing.
I think what happened was that Grace Lee and Leo Chang decided that they were maybe thinking a little bit about doing some kind of series about the COVID-19 crisis. And then Grace Lee is one of the people who sent me her giant bag of lanyards that she had. Her lanyards are the one that are in the clip where I'm pulling it out of the, like 500 lanyards coming out of the bag. Actually, there's only about 50 lanyards, but still coming out of the mailer. And so, and then she said, at some point she said, hey, we should make a little movie about this. You should make a clip about this because we're thinking of doing this series. Can you do that? So my clip became what they call a proof of concept, like the little pilot for their program, which then they showed to other entities that gave them funding.
That's so important. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I want to say like MacArthur Foundation and then the Center for Asian American Media and maybe another place, Ford Foundation, maybe, I'm not sure. But so, so that was a way that they sort of like sold this idea. And now they've commissioned, I want to say many, many more of these to do. I think they got more than 100 people to apply. They had an open call, and now they've got like a whole bunch of people making these little clips that they're releasing, every once or twice a week. So I think 2 so far.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if you guys can hear right now, but it's kind of appropriate for the topic that we're on. I'm in New York here. It's 7 o'clock, and there's a lot of like commotion going on outside because it's a 7 o'clock thank you for the healthcare workers and essential workers out there. I don't know if you can hear that. I have my window open. I can hear it. But
does that happen every night?
Yeah, every night at 7 p.m. People go into the streets on their balconies, on their rooftops, and they clap and they cheer for all the healthcare workers because this is when the shift change happens.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading that, but I didn't realize that was what the timing was.
Yes, that's why they did that.
Going home, they can hear people cheer. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And Kristina, I took a look at your YouTube channel, and you have a lot of really funny things, and you're hilarious. Like you're a comedian, a performance artist, and all that. Do you want to plug what you do or talk about?
What I did.
Yeah.
Okay, let me backtrack. A lot of my shows are about me as a character named Kristina Wong, who now, as I say this, I'm like, I've done it again with Auntie Sewing Squad, who kind of has like martyristic intentions of like fixing things, but it's not that simple. It ends up just being more complicated. So one of the shows I toured for a long time was called Wong Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where Kristina Wong decides to do a show to end all depression and suicide among Asian American women. And without it being autobiographical and insisting that it's not about herself. And then it obviously is. So that's that show. And then my show that I was touring before Kristina Wong for public office was about me going to Africa, which really happened, where I was going to do volunteer work and be more useful than someone just getting in fights online with people. And I ended up making a rap album in Uganda. But also having a very complicated experience as somebody who does a lot of activism here in America from this marginalized identity, and then being the face of colonialism over there. And then this recent show was about running for office. And I did have a TV pilot at one point when Obama was still in office, and then we had a shoot when Trump was over, and nothing made sense about the world.
Yeah,
because like I was sort of the Trumpian character, and but it didn't read as ironic or performed.
Right.
It just felt incredibly offensive. So I was just like, wow, everything is turned upside down.
Yeah, it's interesting how things change. The context changes.
Yeah, politicians have taken my job from me as an artist. So I'm going to run for office. So that's this new show, which for right now is on hold because theaters can't have me out. And then I have a web series called Radical Cram School, which uses children. There's some scripted episodes, but for the most part, it's these kids just say crazy stuff. And we're teaching them about social justice and equity.
It's really fun. I did take a look at it. It's really fun.
Yeah, I'm very proud of that series. It's a series that right-wingers have come after me for, so I'm pushing the right buttons. Yeah, I mean, I guess in ways the Sewing Squad is sort of aligned to what I do. I sew my own set pieces. My aesthetic is, I never imagined I'd be sewing medical equipment.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, like if you look at some of the pictures of my recent shows and even Radical Cram School, you see a lot of fabric in the set, and it's like the idea is it's like a childlike aesthetic that's really playful and fun. And now I like using it to keep farm workers alive. So that happened. Yeah, but that's my work. It's constantly about subverting and having engagement in the world.
Great,
I don't know who I am anymore. Right now I run a sweatshop. So.
I don't think any of us know who we are anymore. We don't know what time of day it is. We don't know what we're supposed to be doing. And
the
Zoom's exploded.
I don't know what this 3 o'clock with Felicia is.
You saw Love Boat Taiwan, right? So yes. Kristina's in it, right? Yeah, she's in it for sure.
Oh,
yeah.
Did you go to Love Boat, Kristina?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you did? Really?
Oh, yeah.
How many times?
I'm the only one who spilled the tea. Everyone else is
Everybody else was like a very polite.
Everyone was like so dignified about their experience. I'm like, what is this?
Not Kristina. No.
Nope.
No, I wouldn't imagine, especially after I saw your show in the vagina part. So, so any like words of advice or things for other people, especially artists at this time who are trying to get through the COVID-19 pandemic? People isolating at home. Any advice?
I think it's really important to know that you are not helpless. I think and if you're bored, honestly, fuck you, and come to me. I'll give you something to do. Because this is actually an amazing moment to realize how much power you have, even if you can't leave your house, even if you have no income. I mean, I feel like I am not bored. I am not having any. I keep hearing about all the deaths and all the horror and all that, but I have not fallen into like an existential freak out that I did after 9/11 and after the 2008 recession. And I think those two moments taught me like you can't just sit around being helpless. You have to, like, honestly, if you bake bread for an auntie, you will make their day. Yep.
Sewing is an act of revolutionary resistance.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Stop being bored. And if you are bored, stop telling the internet that you're bored.
Fight back.
Yeah.
Fight back, sew masks.
Go down sewing, as I say. If this is the end.
Or find some way to use your skills for some, to help others or make some kind of good in the world. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, ladies. I really appreciate it. We'll keep in touch. Take care.
Thanks, Felicia. Take care.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye, Kristina.
Bye, Valerie.
I've been speaking with Kristina Wong and Valerie Soe about the Auntie Sewing Squad, a group of people doing their part to fight COVID-19, one mask at a time. If you'd like to know more about the Auntie Sewing Squad, Kristina or Valerie, just go to our website, talkingtaiwan.com. There you'll find links to their websites, social media handles, ways to donate to the Auntie Sewing Squad, and YouTube links to Kristina's show, Kristina Wong, Sweatshop Overlord, and Valerie's micro-documentary, Sewing in the Time of Coronavirus. If you enjoyed this episode of Talking Taiwan, please take the time to rate and review us on Apple Podcast or Stitcher. Thank you for listening to another episode of Talking Taiwan. I'm your host, Felicia Lin.
Talking Taiwan is brought to you by Forumosa.com.